Good morning.
Good morning. It's it is early morning. I don't know where you are in the world, but it's five something here. And I am darn excited to kick off these 2 days of some of the most spectacular talent, celebrities, members, panels, content uh, that we've seen. I don't know. Yes, our telethons are great. Every telethon is great. I'm excited for this telethon. We have some guests on that have never been with us before, Legion members. We're pretty excited to share the next 2 days with you, celebrating raising funds for Starlight Children's Foundation. And I can't think of a better way to do it than with our family sharing the holidays. Hey, Erica, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Yes, we are excited to raise funds for an amazing organization, Starlight Children's Foundation, doing some amazing things. We're sure some amazing children that are dealing with situations in hospitals. And what they do is, I think, is just fascinating. They, you know, keeping children happy, as happy as they can be while they're dealing with situations while they're in hospitals. And I'm really excited to be able to help them with this. And yes, it's early. And so I'm happy to be here. I am happy to be here.
Thomas, tell us about yourself. And by the way, we had our first technical error. I did not turn on my mic online, so no one could hear what I was saying. So I'll go back to me in a second. But Thomas, go ahead.
I wouldn't expect anything less. This can be like the Millennium Falcon.
That's
It's okay
right.
to have some glitches. Just smash the console and
Bucket of
it'll kick
bolts.
back on. Exactly, exactly. Hey, I'm Thomas Harper. I'm with Garrison Carita out in Pennsylvania. Uh, as a sort of outsider to this process, the command and staff looking in on all the work that went into this, it's just been phenomenal. So I'll be hosting the Jar Jar Thinks trivia competition at 1 o'clock Eastern today on the stream, smack dab in the middle of some just incredible programming. And two things that jumped out to me in this entire process that have nothing to do with trivia. First is the dedication of the team that put all of this together. The programming, as you can already tell from for the next 2 days, you'd be completely justified thinking that was programming at Star Wars Celebration or San Diego Comic-Con. I mean, it's star-studded and probably rivals most pop culture conventions in person. So to rally that kind of Star Wars talent around the cause of Starlight is incredible. And then the second thing, and the most important thing in all of this, as we all know, is the charity is Starlight. And I can't think of any better way to marshal Star Wars than to use it for good as the 501st does and help. And I know as a child, I didn't go through anything remotely like what the children and the patients with Starlight did, but I do know that Star Wars as an entity, as a force of good, helped me numerous times through some of the hardest times in my childhood. And to think that we, through our small part, watching, donating, supporting this cause, can make that sort of difference, make that needle move for even a single child, is incredible. I'm just honored to be a small cog in this large machine, and may the force be with you all today.
I mean, that is about perfect of an intro if I've ever heard, huh? So a
Right?
couple
Okay,
of
bye.
okay, bye. So a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, and again, since my mic was off, I am Justin Sonfield. I'm the Legion Commanding Officer of the 501st. It is our absolute extreme pleasure to be partnering with Starlight in our start of our third year. We've already done some amazing work, not only as the 501st, but as a Star Wars costuming community for this charity. And we're really, really excited about what this is going to hold in the future as well. House cleaning. There are 4 links that you will see through the constant part of this broadcast. There is a link for Starlight Australia, Starlight UK, Starlight Canada, and Starlight USA. For all of us in the USA, that link will be directed straight to a 501st Legion page. By the way, you can give to either one of these no matter where you are in the world. If you happen to be a UK citizen living in the United States and you want to favor theirs, perfect. The only thing is the US is the only link that will have a direct donation on behalf of the 501st. We don't touch any money, it goes straight to Starlight, but it's earmarked as our donations. We are going to be providing a Google Sheet that will allow you to just say, hey, I donated this amount of money to this cause. We will be posting that on our social media. So whoever wants to sign up and say, hey, we did that, we'll allocate it that way. So the totals you might hear throughout the show will only be a quote of the U.S. amount, but we are so grateful for all of you around the world for donating to this cause everywhere. To Thomas's point, this is a program that takes a very, very large amount of time, a very large amount of effort. There is a team of Legion volunteers that have spent a lot of their time in putting this together for you, whether it's on panels, creating graphics, teaching us how to use OBS and Restream and all those fun things. And without all of them, this would not be possible. But the two people that you see over here really made this possible. And these are the two people that have sacrificed their work days, their sanity, in many cases, hair and you know, having to deal with me a lot, that have really truly made this come together and do this every year. And every year we say, we can't do this ever again because it's just too much work. But every year we rally together because it's for children and it's really at the core of what we do. So without further ado, it's about to click to 8 a.m. Any other words from this lovely team?
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of the team, I'm gonna piggyback on that one. There's no way that this could be done without the collaborative efforts of everybody that was participant. And I will honestly call out my wonder twin, Erica McKinney. There's not one other person that spends the countless hours by my side doing what we do. Yes, our whole team is spectacular, but there's no way that we would be doing this if that woman wasn't beside me. And
same Wonder
didn't
Twins.
have the support with Justin. So
same.
Well,
Thank
we
you
are
guys.
literally
Thank
just
you. But
3
we do this
people.
for Starlight.
3 people in a legion of 10
a legion.
Thousands.
10,000s that have crossed through the doors, and the many thousands that are part of this greater Star Wars community.
Exactly.
So without further ado, we're going to start with an amazing fun panel about one of the most incredible things in our community, and that is the idea of building droids. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite cup of joe and your favorite cup, and may the force be with you. And let's have a fun 48 hours of earning money for one heck of a good cause. We'll see you guys shortly.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 501st Telethon. We are droid builders, and we're here to talk droids. My name is Brian Anderson. I'm going to be your host. I've been a 501st member since 2003 and a passionate droid builder since 2019. So let's go around the room and do a little bit of introductions. Let's start with Michael.
Yeah, hi. I'm Mike Budley. I've been droid building for about 7 or 8 years now, mainly 100% in the 3D printed space, and obviously designed a lot of 3D printed droids, and continue to build lots of 3D printed droids until I kind of run out of space. And I've got lots of friends around the world who do similar.
Excellent. And Tim, why don't you go next?
Well, as it turns out, when Michael started doing his 3D printed designs, I started 3D printing droids as well. Started back in 2018 with good old R2-D2, which you don't see in the shot, but he's wearing his party hat as R2-Devo, a band from the 80s. And then I built R5 from my wife, and then Chopper from my daughter, and then Arduo just to see if I could design and print my own droid, and then B2 Emo, and now things are just out of hand. I've been doing about one droid per year, and at this stage, I'm kind of holding steady, trying to upgrade them with all the latest things we've learned, or I've learned over the last almost 6 years of droid building, things that I can do better and make them more robust so they don't end up on the floor at a convention. Anyway, I'm in Orlando, Florida, and I've just been consumed by droid building and designing and everything droids for the last 6 years.
Awesome. Next in my rotation for my view is Darren.
Hi, I'm Darren Moser. I'm in Southern California. I've been droid building since about 2017. My first droid was K2SO, who's kind of out of frame right here as he's very tall, and he's actually a puppet. So I've done a lot of droid puppetry as Servo scared me early on. But again, I just love the mechanical movement and the ability to bring characters to life, because a lot of what we do is puppetry, whether it's with a remote or with your hands, it's all the same. And now my newest guy is little BD6, who rides around on top of a mouse droid, and they are bonded for life. Don't think I can take him off. But yeah, and BD6's journey was really a community thing. I couldn't have attempted that without having such good friends as many people in this video to reach out to. So yeah, it's a fun community. And yeah, I don't know if I've hit the 1 a year mark as Tim has, but K2 is in version 4, if that tells you anything. So there's always upgrades, always upgrades.
And last but not least, Trevor.
Hi, I'm Trevor from Calgary, Canada, playing around in the snow lately. I've been a droid builder for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or so. Started with a BB-8 build because I thought that would be a simple thing to do. And quickly realized that, yeah, the ball is a ball, but the drive is not. So, and moved on to building Astromech and my version of DJ Rex. His name is Bob. And yeah, I definitely don't hit the droid a year sort of thing, but we've built a few, some other ones, some static droids, and just working on expanding and learning and building the new, trying to improve and yeah, build out our repertoire, I guess.
Awesome. So I'm going to jump off of this droid a year concept because I really like that as a lead in here. So one of the things that I love about the droid building hobby is that we're always doing new things, whether it's building new droids, upgrading existing droids, figuring out better ways to do something. So I'd like to bounce around the room and let's talk about something new that you learned or discovered or created this year that's kind of changed the path of your droid building. And let's see, I'm going to put Darren on the spot first.
I knew it was coming to me. Yeah, no, I'll just speak with BD, as again, that was a big learning curve for me. Servos and control systems. I was like, what's a transmitter? What's a receiver? Like, which are basic stuff. But it was really interesting because I had a lot of experience with droids, in general. I could kind of approach it as kind of a fresh eyes view. And so a lot of the documentation and a lot of the processes that people had developed, I could say, okay, well, pretend I know nothing about transmitters. And that kind of helped allow, like, looking at it again with the fresh eyes of like, okay, now I feel I'm in a much better sense that if someone else came to me and said, hey, I want to start doing remote control droids, I could say, okay, well, this is the base level you want to start with as far as knowledge goes. And like I said, with BD6, it was really, I touched on the community a lot. I was like, okay, I want to, buy not the top of the line, but good enough to get me started, or maybe a little more than that. But, and then with BD, it was doing new things as far as combining droids that had not been RC controlled. I think, to my knowledge, this is the no, that shoulder. This is the first BD that's been RC controlled, as opposed to running off of a program, off an Arduino or something like that. And that was a lot of fun, is figuring out, like most droid building, you start with what do you want it to do? And then you go from there, and you slowly add pieces and components. So I would say in this last year, the new things for me were really tapping into the community, and then really just kind of starting an RC journey at step one, which was a lot of fun, and obviously was successful this time.
Very cool. Trevor, how about you? What's something new in your droid life this year?
Mostly programming has been sort of a big focus for me to get the animations and the controls for this guy, the movements. We're starting to use non-servo actuators, so things like hub motors that are controlled over serial buses and stuff like that. So not just strict RC control. That helps you kind of get a little bit more precise control, and makes it a little bit easier to do the control things when you've got multiple actuators. Like, as you know, with racks and such, there's a dozen or so actuators that you can put into these things, so you have a lot of freedom, degrees of freedom to control. And how do you do that with only so many sticks on a remote control? For example, you only have two hands, so how do you do everything? And then, as you know, adding in to sort of make him standalone, so that when you're not puppeteering him, that he does something, right? And he looks somewhat alive, not just sitting there in a lump, just sitting there. So, we're just touching on that. We've got a long way to go to really bring these guys to life. But that's sort of what has been fueling a lot of what I've been working on. That kind of items, adding in the characterization. So we're working on voice modulation. So Rex has a voice modulator in there to do pitch shift and such like that. Well, how do we do that in real time so that we can bring that real time, person to person interaction together? And so those are the areas that we're trying to slowly learn and figure out, how do we get there, and then how do we personify these inanimate objects.
Well, that's a really interesting area, because if you think about the DJ Rex that's at the cantina at the Disney parks, it's a stationary droid. It has a huge control box underneath it that's as big as the droid itself. It has a fixed animation pattern, and everything just kind of runs in a loop. And so what the droid building community is doing is they're saying, well, Disney, you did a good job, don't get me wrong, but we think we could do a little bit better in our garages and basements with things that we bought on Amazon.
Who's saying that? Right. I'm not saying that to them.
Yeah, it's really wild. We're taking these things to such an extreme, and kind of pushing the envelope of what's possible to do in a very small space. Because if you look at that RX droid, there really is not a lot of space in there for any kind of really anything.
Yeah. And that's been the challenge with a lot of these, like B2, the ducklings, a lot of these droids, like Astromechs, they're cavernous compared to these, and they don't have as many features until you start adding the arms and bits and lifters and stuff. Things get a lot more complicated. But yeah, it's trying to do it all within this item, and then also make it mobile. So my Rex is mobile, so I can run around to people and have those interactions and such. So it's adding a drive. It's making all of that stuff mobile and then controllable in a small package that can be real time, have those real time interactions. So being able to control it with one person, the movie guys, they have the advantage of multiple people, and we could do multiple people, but makes that even more difficult when you're trying to do a live one-on-one interaction with somebody, where you want to have, okay, you control the head, I'm going to control the body. Oh, you go this way and I'm going to go this way, and trying to do that really live. So we're trying to do it with one person, because most of the time we only have one person as well. So those are the challenges that we try to tackle with this stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like one of this droid here, D309, is one of my new projects for this year, and space was definitely a big problem with her. I mean, she's skinny, like she's very, very little. And so trying to figure out how to get any kind of mechanical bits inside of her, when I first started building it, it was like, oh, there's the C3PO animatronics. I could just kind of riff off of that. And then I realized how much smaller she was and how suddenly fitting, a mini hobby servo is about the best I'm going to get into that elbow. I'm like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with that? I can't lift an arm out like this if I can only fit a little 30-kilogram servo in there.
Yeah, Star Wars, they've come up with some amazing visual designs, but they sure aren't practical, and the movies cheat a lot, especially with the CGI and stuff. So when we're trying to make real objects, like especially the humanoid droids of today, battle droids and things, and they are just, even K2SO, look at him, how spindly his legs are and how massive his torso is. It just isn't real. To make our lives easy to reproduce those. And so, yeah, it's super challenging.
Yeah,
but we keep trying.
K2, I think I seem to be drawn towards like characters that never existed in real life, either video games or fully CG, which,
right,
like you said, Trevor, real life mechanics, gravity, torque, all of that. That's a fun aspect of droid building because it's a challenge, because we can design our own droids, but it's very rare. Most likely we're replicating something to try to make it look like it came off the screen. And often we have to play by the real world rules, and they don't. So yeah, K2 was a challenge of like, okay, yeah, how do you make him walk and talk? You can't fit inside of him like a suit. You can't, so we all approach these problems in different ways, which is what's the joy of the community, is how everyone approaches it. BD1 with Michael's design was very fun and amazing, because again, that droid is so small, and I'm pretty sure he's a different scale when he's on the ground in the game versus when he's on Cal's shoulder. So they even do mass shiftings, which we can't do. But yeah, my solution for a walking droid, Disney's, was to spend God knows how many millions of dollars on the BDX droids in the parks, which are great, but they're limited by a size of servos and mechanics. And my BD was like, well, I'm just going to put him on a rolling droid, because that's how he's going to walk around. And hey, it's the cheaper option.
It's great. And the interaction, I've seen that droid in person, the interaction that you can get by moving around to people, it still gives the character of both. Now you've got the characteristics of the mouse plus the BD droid that really adds those dimensions. So it's great.
Thank you.
All right, and Tim, what have you been up to?
Well, in the last year, I've been trying to retrofit, or like I learned a lot, like how to do an electrical system, how to make the sound system louder, better ways to plug in batteries, and all these things that they're really kind of droid building 101. Well, I started droid building 000, and I cobbled together R2D2, and I ran him till he failed, basically. And then like, well, what happened here? And you could look inside and see the rat's nest of wires and figure that out yourself pretty easy. But basically, I've been trying to go through and refit all my droids with the right terminals. I mean, I always use good terminals for wires and stuff, but just make the wiring better, make the electrical systems better, make better servos and better motors. And with that in mind, the biggest challenge for any of these droids behind me is the little red one back there, B2. And what I've figured out is he doesn't need a better electrical system. He needs better parts, because he's got a lot of amazing things that movie physics works, but in the real world, my plastic attempt at reproducing him was just shy of the mark. So what I've done in the last year, and particularly in the last 2 months, is discovered metal. Like you can make metal parts and have design metal parts, and just specifically for pieces of things that you're trying to do. So this is going to be a brushless hub motor mounted inside a mechanism wheel that's 6 inches that you could otherwise not fit into his foot shell. So that's kind of what Disney did, because B2 is a practical tool that my transmitters are yelling at me for inactivity for a long time. But he's a practical tool, and it's kind of been a Rubik's Cube to solve. How did they do it without knowing how they did it? So I've been just kind of re-engineering the stuff that I've already done, using the knowledge that I've gained along the way for structures and joints and electrical systems and motors. And one of the problems the droid community's had for a while is everybody starts not really knowing what they're doing. So they ask a friend, and the friend says, here's how I did it. And so what you end up is replicating years-long 1980s technology baseline that people start with, which works great, but it's probably needs a refresh. Maybe should use a little faster processor or whatever. Maybe let's try a different motor controller, because the ones that are out there are hard to find and expensive, or even the controller, Bluetooth versus radio control versus any other control system you might roll. We've been kind of static as a community, and only in the last year or so, I've seen maybe even longer than that, year and a half, a renaissance in control systems. And as Trevor was alluding to, astromechs are fairly pedantic. They got 3 legs. They pretty much always stay on the ground. Whereas the droids that are coming out now have multiple axes of movements, multiple servos, things that move all by themselves, but you don't want to move them in a way that doesn't look like it's natural. So more advanced control systems, more advanced electrical systems, custom printed circuit boards, so you can get these fancy lights to do things that need to be done. So I've basically been going back and reimagining the droids I've already built with the technology I've discovered along the way. And that's the long answer to a short question.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned discovering metal, because I kind of had a metal discovery myself this year. So when I first encountered R2-D2s in the wild, it was back in the day where you're looking at like $15,000-$20,000 and years of gathering parts, and I was just so overwhelmed by it, couldn't even comprehend it. It was when the 3D printed droids came around that I started to feel like it was accessible. But I had taken my astromech down to the Orlando area for HalcyCon, a Galactic Star Cruiser convention. And I got there and found the entire venue was carpeted. And my droid didn't really like carpet very much. So I was kind of crawling along on this thick plush carpet, and I was pretty sad. I parked SK in the corner. I was like, well, I guess you're not moving today. And then this R2 comes zipping along. Like, one of the local guys brought this R2, and it's just cruising on this carpet like nothing. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, scavenger drives. It's a printed droid, but I put the scavenger drives in the feet, and it elevates it up higher, and it's stronger. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Another R2 comes in, same thing. And now these guys are like literally just like twirling around me in circles, and I'm sitting motionless. I'm like, all right, fine. I'm going to look into this whole metal business. And send like changed my whole worldview. I was like, wait, I just upload a file, and like 3 days later I get metal parts, and they're all like deburred and ready to use. Like that's possible. And so now I'm looking at everything. I'm like, wait, I could, instead of, designing a file and 3D printing it, I could design a file and send it to them and get it back in like aluminum or stainless steel or whatever.
And that's its own set of way of thinking, because when you're working in plastic, you can create any shape you want, perfectly attuned. But when you constrict yourself to other materials like plate, aluminum, or CNC, like, you have to play by their rules. So there is a learning curve. It's not just send something that you would have printed to a metal maker and it'll come out good or come out at all.
But I think that applies to printing as well, though. Like, we had to learn how to make strong printed parts, right? Like that has been a skill that we just have learned, Michael has done an amazing job at with all of the designs, is how do you make that printable, and how do you make these objects, right? So yeah, we're adding metal to them and using metal now, but it's just same learning curve that you already learned the plastic part of it. That's all.
And I think at the end of the day, the real lesson is don't constrain your worldview to one building process. Use the best that you have available to you in budget, talent, and tools. Use the best you can to get the best results, and don't just think, because the classic, what plastic should I use? PLA or PETG or ABS? It's like use them all, but in the right places.
Yeah, and I think that was really big for me was, not, I had it in my head, like, if your stuff is printed, it's printed. If your stuff is metal, it's metal. And it had never really crossed my mind that there's nothing preventing you from overlapping that and just doing what's right. Like the New England Droid Builders had the opportunity to do this amazing project this year with Boston Dynamics, the makers of real robots. And so we got to build a Star Wars-ified body kit for a Spot and got to mount it on the Spot robot. And it came to a convention with us and was dancing around and stuff. And that was a really great example of this intersection of, we had their droid, which was a real actual robot, which had mount points in specific areas. And we're like, okay, well, we could do aluminum, we could do prints, we can do anything we want to this. And the group ended up coming together with this great fusion of skills and materials that met the weight requirements and the durability requirements. And, it was kind of like you said, thinking outside of just, I am doing printing, and just thinking what's right for this situation in this place at this particular flex point.
I think the kind of interesting thing is, and you touched on it, most people don't think they can approach the hobby at all because it's 3 years of collecting parts, and you spend all this money, you don't have a droid. Whereas if you start with printing, you can get caught in the trap of like, I can only print. But the nice part about printing is you can enter the hobby with a fairly low overhead, a $300 printer and a roll of filament, and you can start printing a droid, and you don't have to buy everything up front. You buy just what you need to complete the part you're working on now. And in that vein, I always tell people, don't limit yourself in the choices you make early as to what this droid's going to become. Because right now you can't imagine what it's become because you haven't seen what what's going to come out of those printers. And once you start seeing it on your desk, your imagination's going to run wild. And when you engage with the community, you're going to have, like, I thought my first droid was going to be static. Oh, I can put lights in it? Oh, I have to have lights. Oh, the panels will open? I have to have my panels open. Oh, they move and they have sounds? Oh, I want my droids to do everything I've ever seen on screen. And next thing you know, mission creep.
All right, Michael, we haven't gotten to you yet. So what have you been up to this year? Doing anything fun?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking actually, because one of the, and I completely buy into the mixed materials. I think one of the challenges and disciplines that we need to get into thinking is not over engineering things. I always, kind of say build an aeroplane, not a tank. What we can do is we can put huge chunks of metal and huge chunks of steel and end up with something that, sort of 300-400 pound. And actually, what you want to try and do is optimize the weight in combined with kind of using the right materials, for the design. But no, this year, I mean, it's been the B2EMO journey along with Tim. It's one of the first ones where we work together.
Yes.
I would say for anybody who wants to build a droid, building a droid is a learning opportunity. You're not building a droid, you're actually learning things. And if you want a really big learning opportunity, B2EMO is a brilliant droid to build. We started that project segmenting with head, body, and feet, and we said, Tim, do you want to do the drives? And Alex did the body, and I did the head. Tim definitely got the short end of the straw because the feet in B2EMO are ridiculously complex. You've got a lift, you've got they go in and out, you've kind of got drives that you need to squeeze in there. I think the first version was the imposter drive. I think you called it, Tim, because it was impossible.
Did call it that because it was impossible.
It was, but in the time that we had and what we created actually got all the axis of movements. There was 20 plus channels in there of things spinning and turning. And when you first look at it, you think, oh, it's a really big square box, so everything will fit in. And of course, when you start to get into it, it becomes a real kind of challenge around space. So that's been one. The second one is the ride-on droids. When I very first did 3D printed droids, there was a guy in the States who had a steel R2, and he said you can never 3D print an R2D2 because it won't stand up with the stresses. And then he sat on it and drove it around, which always stuck with me. So I always wanted to do an R2D2, a three-legged astromech that you 3D printed completely with the drive system that you could actually ride on. So the little baby droids, again, not for the faint-hearted. I've also learned a lot about centers of gravity this year with that little droid and how easy it is to fall over. But one of the most, I just want to kind of share, if I can do a very quick video. One of the most interesting ones has been the duckling journey. And it's interesting where we're saying, where Disney's got all of these resources. What we've got is we've got a community, and we've got some incredibly talented people in the community. And this is a piece of software that's machine learning effectively. So what they're doing is exactly what they did in Disney, really, which is putting all of the parameters in, all of the weights, all of the speed and the axis, and then the torturing thousands of droids in the virtual space to see if they can get one of them to kind of learn how to walk and how to actually move. And I don't know if you can see this one, this video just here, but this is the first one I've seen in the wild, so to speak, that's been made by, again, by hobbyists, by people working together, sharing some of all of the new technology. I think machine learning in particular and rethinking some of our control systems is a kind of really exciting space to go to. So yeah, there's a lot going on, really. Just stop sharing now if I can do. Yeah, a lot going on in the droid building space, but the thing that at the heart of it is this connection and the community, people sharing what they do, and then the constant challenge of that's great. It's like Tim said, we need to break out of this loop of doing what we've always done and kind of explore new materials, new technology, new software, and working together to do some really cool stuff.
Well, I also think, being able to apply different perspectives to things, like, so, the duckling droids from Disney, there's a very high-tech solution with machine learning and high-powered equipment. But then, I'm thinking about the BD on its mouse droid here, and how, you could make something that evokes the same kind of feelings as the duckling droid without thousands of dollars of equipment by using, some old-fashioned, like tubing with wires and, little finger rings, pushing things back and forth. And, I love that we're able to kind of take this world that's been created around us and find ways to bring it to life in different fashions. We've, throughout our conversation today, we've said puppetry a lot. And I've gotten the opportunity recently to talk to a couple of people that have more of a background in puppetry than technology, that are starting to get into droid building because it sort of hit them that this is puppetry as well. Mm-hmm. There's a person who lives near me that I met through a steampunk festival who's a lifelong puppeteer. And he wants to get into droid building because it's another way that he can take an inanimate object and bring it to life through, moving things in just the right sort of ways. And I think that's a really cool part of what we're doing because, when you think about droid building, naturally, people's thoughts gravitate towards technology and money. And like that, those are the kind of things people think about when they first hear droids. But there's so much kind of artistry and creativity and emotion in it. And I personally find it really fun that we're able to play around with that.
And puppetry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say puppetry is an incredible skill on its own, and I think by the nature of what a lot of we are, you know, we're kind of engineers or we're programmers, and it, you know, I find it a pleasure to watch Sai, for example, when she's puppeteering BB-8 because she's bringing a character into that space, which is, you know, absolutely outstanding. And Darren, you know, with the BD ones, you get people in our space that are kind of masters at engaging with people, and all they've really got to do is work out how they move their hands or which sticks that they do, but actually their focus is on that interaction. So couldn't agree with you more, actually. And it doesn't need a lot of technology.
Although, if you have technology that can help, one thing that's come out in the last couple of years is something called human cyborg relations. So, Michael Pearl went and mapped every boop, beep, whistle, and grunt from R2D2 and categorized as happy, sad, angry, scared, and then being blown up by the genres. And so he created a synthesizer that speaks R2D2, and as the operator, the puppet master, and when I interact with somebody, is that a happy, a sad, an angry, or scared reaction my droid's going to have to what just happened? So I flip a switch. If it was a happy, that's a happy, something sad. And what actually is going on the chip is it's keeping track of his mood. So if you give him a happy sound and another happy sound, he's going to be happier. And if you give him two sad sounds, he's going to be sad. And if you give him scared, depending on how happy and sad he was, so all sounds are actually created uniquely at the time of rendering, and you have a more authentic droid experience with the user because it's not just playing MP3 number 415, it's actually creating a new sound and stuff like that. When I first heard that as a concept, I also snapped into like, I'm not operating a droid, I'm operating a puppet. And it really changed my way of approaching the hobby in public is I want these people to think whatever they're looking at is real, and if you can pull that off, you've got the magic that keeps me coming back to this hobby because that is hours of endless entertainment for me.
Yeah,
like
and
you said, you know, with BD1, you know, my first BD was, as this one you see, was actually a hand puppet, no servos inside of him, and that was its own fun challenge of, okay, well, you know, how do you then, you know, articulate that? And my design was basically just building off the back of his head into a standard, you know, puppeteer's rig. But you learn a lot of puppetry is very custom. Like there's no off the shelf. It's so 3D printing was instrumental in prototyping that and outputting different versions and copies to make it all work together. But then this was just kind of a, you know, a stair step. Like I still bring him out, but that learning directly contributed to BD6, and now I was like, oh well, I don't have to reinvent the wheel because Michael already put servos inside of a BD unit. I just have to, you know, figure out how to bolt him onto a mouse droid where he won't fall over because that would be disastrous. And yeah, I think it's so fun with droid building in a way because we are playing in this playground with these characters that are already existing, and they're all like we've said, the puppeteers and the visual artists bring them to life in the movies and the video games and the shows, and that is definitely an appeal is like, oh, I want to also bring this character to life, because if I want to make a servo move, I could bolt it to whatever and make my mailbox open, like, but I want the servo to move to make you, you know, sad. Like I want to pair that with, you know, Princess Leia's theme, and I'm going to look up at you and bat my ears, and every girl who sees that is kind of like fawning over it. And you're creating these moments, especially with children, especially with younglings, where even I've had moments where I'm standing there and you could see me. I'm not hiding. I'm obviously strapped to this droid, or I'm wearing a black, you know, cover. but you disappear. And when you're doing it right and you're conveying that emotion, if you're doing it well, then even though they can see you, the facade is there and you vanish and it's just the character, which I'm sure obviously is a little easier when you're standing 20 feet back with the remote control, but it's all the same principles, which is a really fun part of the hobby.
Yeah, I think people don't want to see the person behind the curtain. So, like I don't go for very subtle when I'm driving my astromech. Like I use Padawan 360 with the Xbox 360 remote, and I have the gold chrome C3PO edition controller. And so I'm standing there with this shiny reflective object in my hand. And even if I'm only 6 feet away, like people don't even notice me. They don't even think about me being there because they're just more interested in interacting with the droid. And for me, one of the things that was a really interesting challenge over the last couple of years. So I kind of went down this rabbit hole of the Galactic Star Cruiser experience. So, without rehashing years of online debate, it was a live interactive Star Wars experience that Disney put together. And what was different about it from a droid perspective is, we see R2D2 or F5D4 Chopper on screen, and then maybe might interact with them in a park. Anyone that ever interacted with SK620 was doing so from 3 feet away. So that particular character, everyone who had ever experienced that character had experienced it in person. So I felt a lot more sort of obligation to operate it correctly and get the mannerisms and the behaviors right, because I knew this was something that people had been personally interactive with. And one of the events that I brought the droid out to, a mother and daughter came in and immediately teared up and ran over and hugged SK. And they were talking to SK and telling SK about what had happened since the last time they had seen each other. And then after a couple of minutes, they snapped out of it and they were like, oh, wait, hold on. We're adults and we're in a hotel lobby in Rhode Island right now. Okay. But in that moment, it was all very real. And that's such a rewarding experience to see someone just kind of lose themselves in the moment. And this droid that you've built, like suddenly, like that's a real character that they know and that they care about and that they're interacting with. And you're not even there anymore. And, it sounds weird saying like it's so amazing when people forget I exist. But in this context, it's really amazing when people forget you exist. I feel like that's a badge of honor that you've done something right.
Yeah, that's the goal. You want them to interact with R2D2 or C3PO or whatever. You want them to see that character and not the man behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz. You want to interact with this. You as the person viewing it, you alluded to it. They want to suspend disbelief and have that experience even for a few seconds.
Although I will say,
right.
I will say, as the man behind the curtain, often, when you can't hide, like with K2 or BD1, it still is interesting because you're kind of inviting them into the secret. Like, yes, obviously K2SO is not standing there on his own without a person near him. Otherwise, he'd have a giant base and be bolted to the ground. But people get just as much joy when I'm driving K2 looking and he has screens, that's how he sees, or that's how you manipulate the hands, and so it's kind of like you're pulling back that Wizard of Oz curtain a little bit, and if you lean into that, it definitely doesn't dampen their experience at all. They're still enjoying the character. They just kind of get a little bit of the magic rubbed off on them. So yeah, there's kind of two pools. There's you can't hide and you can, and when you can, then definitely the pure magic is when, like you said, Brian, where they forget themselves of where they are and what's going on, and they're just there's that droid that I remember, and I'm sure it's the exact same one that I talked to on the Starship. It's not, but they think it is.
Yeah. All right, and so we're getting a little short on time. So I think for our last round, I'd like to ask everybody what your plans are for 2025. Like, what things do you think you're going to be working on? Michael, you laughed first, so I'll go with you.
I laughed at the impossible question. What's my plans? I think there's still a lot of work on V2 to play. I think there's some great kind of new developments and new innovations that we're seeing in that space, as Tim mentioned on the drives, but also across that whole body, because there's a lot of new stuff in there. I am very excited to see where the Duckling goes and where machine learning takes us from and it's accessible and it's kind of affordable. So, one of the things that we've aimed for is some degree of walking droids, and we're starting to sort of see that hit the scene. So it'll be quite interesting to play around in that. And then the ride on droids has been so much fun, because it takes the droid builder from the person who's behind the cloth to the person who's sat on the thing with a dome as a hat, looking ridiculous, and actually engaging with people. So I have played around with some mini bikes, but I'd love to do I want to do a series of Star Wars vehicles, so you can get into little X-wings or little snow speeders and that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm playing in that. Plus, we've got new Disney content coming out all the time, so we'll see what exciting droids come out then.
Think AT-ATs. We need ride-on AT-ATs.
Ride-on AT-ATs. Yeah, we're all riding around like little dogs that we can sit on. Yeah.
All right, Trevor, how about you?
For me, it's sort of expanding the things. I'm helping out with a couple of other new droids, trying to get some more astromechs out into the world, and continuing to develop this guy, adding, unlike yours and such, my arms don't move yet and things. So we're going to be adding some more movements to the arms and trying to increase that personification. So that's mostly my plans is that, and just helping out expand the items, working on some new control systems to help with that, with the new motors and such, lighting schemes. There's so many little lights and bits and bops for all of these droids. You don't really realize that when you look at them at first. Like even B2, like there's a ton of lighting in a B2 droid, and we're working with some folks who are building the cook droid from episode 2 and Mandalorian and such, and so we want to try and bring that to life, and that's sort of the area that we're focusing on.
Cool. Darren, how about you?
Always upgrades. Definitely K2 is back in the forefront, as we have the Andor premiere coming up in a few short months, I think April. And that would be a dream to get to take K2SO there. So I'm currently have a fresh batch of finger joints that are printed at the highest resolution of my printer to avoid sanding. And yeah, it's so funny with upgrades, because in some ways, some of the things will be new, and in some ways, there'll be things that I always wanted from the very beginning. And it just, like the hands, for sure. Like I've always wanted the hands to do more and just add expression to those. And, maybe the fifth time will be the charm, but there's a host of small upgrades, movability, stability, strength, all those pieces. And yeah, he's been around for many years, but he's still a lot of fun to drive. So K2 is getting the limelight.
Kind of gives you an appreciation of George Lucas with the special editions. This is your original vision, but the technology just wasn't there at the time for you to achieve what you needed. So now you're
or
going
maybe
back.
Not the technology, maybe more my ability with the technology. But yeah, and there have been big strides. People have been developing fully animatronic K2 hands now, which is not quite the route I want to go, just because servo noise and weight. So I'll still be doing a lot of with these fingers. Actually, they're all linkage driven. So you have one linkage and you move it 1 centimeter of distance and the entire finger will curl. And so that will track back to my hands. But yeah, you start with a notepad and you say, what do I want this to do? And you just start sketching. So K2 will be getting a lot of love this year.
Tim, how about you?
I've been trying to finish all the projects that I've started, from upgraded structures for R2D2 to now that I'm fairly confident that I can build a motor drive system, a hybrid one with metal where it needs to be and plastic where it can be. That little guy back here over my shoulder, our duo, his original motion was his whole body would sway back and forth. And now that we've got, at least I think I've got a working B2 drive that does that type of motion, I want to go back and retrofit him with what he should have always been, but I didn't have the time to do, didn't have the technology skills or materials to do it properly. And so he's going to get a retrofit from the ground up, literally, so that he can wobble back and forth. And I was talking with my daughter last night. She goes, Chopper does that too, you know. I'm like, you're right. So Chopper, I want to give him his shoulder, like his whole body and his legs kind of pump up and down, and he can do the sway too. So I want to go back and give fresh life to my cartoon friends and give them some more of that animation now that I have strong servos and strong metal structures that I wasn't I avoided before because I was trying to be like a single purist in a form of production, and I've grown to the point like I'm going to use whatever I can get access to pull off this movie magic. So Chopper, our duo, and some upgraded structures and whatnot for Astromechs. So my list is long, my time is short.
It scared me that you said that your target was to finish all the projects that you're doing, because I don't think we could do that in 2025, or else the universe would implode.
We're really good at starting projects.
Yeah, exactly. We need to start more projects, not finish.
Yeah, I don't believe in the concept of finishing all the projects, because by the middle of the year, you will have started 4 more projects that haven't existed yet. And, you know, at least that's how it works for me. I think I'm mostly looking at a lot of overdue maintenance this year. You know, I have a lot of things in SK620 that I really need to clean up and repair and improve. You know, I went all in on that one with the gadgets, you know, all the arms and doors opening and everything. And some of them have gotten a little funky with time, where, you know, the door might open 7 out of 10 times that I try to open it, and may not necessarily always close again afterwards on the first shot. So a little bit of cleanup there. And then the other thing that I've really been wanting to work on is, so one of my big focuses is sort of like convention display booth kind of stuff. So I tend to think more like a Disney dark ride animatronic on a lot of things than interactive engagement. So I want to make duckling droids, but I want them to be relatively autonomous, that can just kind of like bop and boop in their little spots over the course of a few days, so that at our convention displays, we could have like sort of the 3 little park droids that you see, but no one's operating them. They just kind of poke their heads out every once in a while and look around and make a cute little noise and then go back to what they're doing and just kind of shuffle their feet in place and things like that. So I tend to try to go for, you know, fairly simple animations that can be run tens of thousands of times without any maintenance. So while everybody's doing their machine learning and their training on the ducklings, I'm just sort of thinking, yeah, but what if I just put a little servo in the neck that just goes like this every couple of minutes? So that's one of my goals for the year. All right, and I think we are just about time. Does anyone have any sort of final thoughts or encouragements they would like to share with would-be droid builders?
I would say that if you have this as a hobby, and this is kind of droid building 101, you don't come in with all the skills. You don't know everything you need to know to complete a droid, but the community does. It's a great community. Everyone wants to help. We need more droids in the world, so don't let a hobby. We're here to help.
Yeah, and I think even for seasoned droid builders, it's important to never stop asking other people. We had a really funny case where one of the other local droid builders to me, we live 20 minutes from each other. We both decided to do scavenger drive upgrades for our droid feet. And neither one of us posted about this anywhere. We just started doing it. And then we realized both of us bought huge rolls of chain. Both of us bought chain break tools. And we live right down the street from each other. But since we forgot to do that sharing, like, okay, so now we both have 10 extra feet of chain and a $50 chain break tool that we're never going to use again. Cool. So, even if you've done this a million times, like never get kind of complacent about just talking to other builders and sharing, because, I think it was you, Tim, who made a comment about, sort of stuck in kind of like a technology of a certain era mindset. You may have built 5 astromechs and you may be able to build a really solid astromech, but somebody else might be doing it entirely different now. And it's worth knowing about that, because it could be that maybe you don't have to scour eBay for that vintage Microsoft USB adapter anymore. Like, maybe there's a better way.
Indeed.
Any
Yeah,
other parting thoughts?
I would just say, like you said, the benefit of the community is all the different minds turning on these problems in different ways, and that's to be celebrated, because we get so much innovation out of it, and people approach things, they'll just, I'm sure within the next 5 years we're going to have new droid builders who come in and look at these problems in brand new ways and say, oh yeah, why wouldn't you use send cut send from the get-go? And I mean, I've seen send cut send R2 legs that are completely kit built that you just tack weld together, and because someone wanted to do that, and then they thought of it and developed it. And the only other thing I'll say is, the thing I'm most impressed about hobby droids, or droids built by hobbyists, is, again, their ability to do just about everything in one droid. Because if you didn't know, that's not quite how they do it on the stage. Usually you have multiple droids and each droid does one thing very well. Like, this is the droid that drives on sand, and this is the droid that can turn, and this is the droid that has the little things that come out and interface. So, don't beat yourself up that your droid can't do absolutely everything, because the real droids from the films, and that's just for the economics of scale and the predictability, and they have to do it right every time. So it makes sense to make one that does one thing and is a specialist, whereas our droids are generalists, where they can do just about everything. But we love that challenge, and I think everyone is rising to it.
Yeah, I've part joked, part threatened that someday I'm going to make the rolling BB-8 that was just the guy in the morph suit with the little lawnmower handle,
Oh,
and I'm
you
just going to
should.
run
That'd
around
be
and push
so
that around
fun.
at events.
That would be awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah, the one thing I would add really is that, I mean, we've talked a lot today about creativity and complexity and machining and metals and all that kind of stuff, but really the other side of it is people come into this hobby with what's accessible to them. So, if you enjoy making things out of wood, build a wooden droid. If you want to just grab a 3D printer and you want to grab some filament, you can 3D print one. And I think what we've been talking today is at the end of the 7-year journey, you've suddenly discovered a whole new horizon of toys. But also, for people just starting, you can start with whatever skills you bring into it and then just add slowly.
Yeah, and that's, one of the questions that I get from people pretty often is, how do you know X, or why do you have this particular thing? Like in my workshop, we're like, oh, I have to sand this. I'm going to go use my stationary bench mount drum sander. And somebody will be like, why on earth do you have a stationary bench mount drum sander? I'd be like, well, one time 5 years ago, I really, really, really needed that, and I got one, and now it's sit here waiting for an opportunity to be useful again. And nobody just sort of springs into existence with a fully tricked out workshop and 11 3D printers and all this other stuff. We just kind of accumulate the time and the experience. And I have yet to meet a droid builder that is not overly enthusiastic about passing that information on. If anything, people might be a little bit overwhelming with how enthusiastic they are about supporting your projects. Like hypothetically, someone's R2D2 spinning around yours in circle while the owner is texting you links for upgrades.
Yep, that happens.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure, and I hope all you viewers out there enjoy this presentation and the rest of the telethon.
Night.
It's great to see the kids, and it brings like a light to their day. And I mean, I know the term is used a lot, but it's really great to bring smiles to them. And it just is a really great way to give back for all of us.
There are studies that show that play, while amazing for childhood development, also positively improves health outcomes for kids. And so that's where Starlight's programs of delivering happiness, like our Starlight gowns, like this one here today, one of our newest Star Wars gowns, plus the toys and the games that we're able to deliver, really are helping to improve health outcomes for the kids that we serve.
There's so many benefits for our patients and families coming to events like Star Wars Day. It's all about quality of life for our patients as a pediatric palliative care center. So coming to events like this where the patients, their siblings, their parents can all participate in activities together in a medically friendly environment where children with diseases, injuries, and illnesses can meet other kids like them, and siblings can meet other siblings like them and just have fun is such a value for families to feel less alone.
Coming here and seeing like this community of people that are volunteering or work here, and the Starlight Foundation and how they put this on is just really reassuring, and seeing the big smile on his face is just giving me a little bit of solace knowing that he's in good hands.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We have a special guest with us today. First off, let's start off with welcoming you back to another panel on the 501st Legion's 2024 Starlight Holiday of Hope Telethon. We are raising funds for Starlight Children's Foundation. We are delivering happiness. We are bringing smiles. We are doing whatever we can to support this amazing fundraising endeavor. With me, I have 5 gentlemen that I'm excited to share this hour with. My name is Teresa Nuttall. I am from Badlands Garrison. I am on the command team for the 501st Legion as one of the PR officers here. Our command team is an amazing group of people that do whatever we can for our Legion and our near 15,000 members worldwide. I am sharing the day today with the amazing puppeteer, Brian Herring. Welcome, Brian.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yes,
Hello.
thank you.
Good morning or
Good
afternoon,
morning.
depending on where you.
So, Stephen, let's start with you and then we'll go around with introductions and then we will leap right in. Evan, you can take it over at the end and begin the panel. Let's go, Stephen.
All right. So I'm Stephen McBath. I am out of the Georgia Garrison and been in 501st for a little bit of time now, moved around a couple different garrisons, but here just kind of hanging out and enjoying, loving some droid puppeteering. So I'm excited to see and talk to Brian about that, as I think that's my next venture. That's where I'm heading next. So we'll go. I think Peter next, Teresa. Is that what you're thinking? Since
Sure.
It's all right, just go
All
across
right.
top row.
Hi, welcome and good morning, everybody. I'm Peter Nuthall, also from Badlands Garrison. I'm also Teresa's brother, TK12175, and I'm also a droid builder. These are my babies. We got Dio and BB-8 here, so we're very happy to be here. I've been in Legion for almost 11 years. Next month will be 11 years. That's it.
Let's go, Eric. Hey, Eric.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Mulder. I'm also a droid builder in Badlands. I have Lola and another BB-8 just in the corner there, just out of frame.
Thanks for joining us. All right, Evan, it's all you, sir.
All right, my name is Evan Thacker. I'm a part of the Diamond Garrison out of Arkansas, USA. I am also working on droids. I don't have a completed droid yet, but I've dug into the venture of building an astromech and also a chopper droid. BB-8 intimidates me, so I've got all the questions about what it is, what it's like to puppeteer a droid of that style. It's got to be super cool. Fascinated by that type of droid and your work across actually five Star Wars films now, right, Brian?
Yep.
Awesome.
All the theatrical ones, yeah.
Great. Well, I know everybody's got questions for you. So I don't know who wants to go first, or if they would like for me to go ahead and kick us off with some questions. But I just want to say thank you again for joining us, Brian. We're so excited to have you here. We've been fortunate to see a lot of awesome performances from you. Fascinated by your work with BB-8. Also, the Porgs. I'm a big fan of the Porgs, so I know that you had a hand in some of the stuff going on there. But your awesome career actually spans even outside of Star Wars with awesome shows like Prometheus. You did some work with the Muppets. You worked with Neil Scanlon and a couple of other groups doing puppeteering for a long time now, right?
Yeah, I'd started puppetry. I started working on puppetry completely by accident in 1992. And I went along to an audition for a TV show, and I got it. And it was a show called Spitting Image, which was a satirical puppet show, which was big rubber puppets. If you ever saw the video for Genesis song "Land of Confusion,"
yes,
where but it was that company.
I do remember that Spitting Image stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, so I was the trainee puppeteer on that in the 90s, and then they brought it back a few years ago. We shot that through the pandemic, and I was the consulting puppeteer, because I think I was the only one that could still remember how we did it, and it was a lot of fun. But so that's where I kind of started with puppetry. I began as an actor, and I was doing various things, but I found myself in puppets, and I just stayed there. Really, it just seemed to be it just seemed to be a good fit. So that kind of led me through. I worked with the Jim Henson Company for about 10 years, doing various things in the UK. And I think Muppets Treasure Island was the first kind of big movie I worked on. And then I'm
a huge fan of the Muppets, so that is like my favorite thing.
I used to love
I know this is a Star Wars panel, but I wanted to bring that up.
No,
I love the Muppets.
Treasure Island.
Muppet Treasure Island is absolutely amazing. It's one of my favorites.
Yes. 1000%.
Yeah, it was the Muppets. As a kid, I was sort of. I grew up. I was born in 1970, so the Muppets and Star Wars were two very big staples of my childhood. So it was weird to kind of be able to go and work with both of that. Both of those groups. It was a strange old thing, and been very fulfilling. And also very weird as well when you suddenly find yourself in rooms with these icons. So that's always a huge amount of fun. But that was sort of the beginning of my career, and then I did a TV show, and I met a man called Neil Scanlon who built a puppet that I was working on, and that's how I kind of got involved with Neil. And then Neil employed me a couple of times, and I did Prometheus with him for Ridley Scott, which was a fascinating job to work on. And again, as a big Alien fan, that was
what a big difference with Prometheus versus Muppets Treasure Island, right?
Oh, completely. Yeah, I mean, I've done other films in between. I did Hellboy 2 and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and things like that. But yeah, Prometheus was definitely a different gear, a real gear change. And then from there, when Neil got the Star Wars job, I wound up on his team for that. And now I'm talking to you. It was an amazing thing to be involved in. I've done theatre, I've done sort of Little Shop of Horrors and various other sort of theatre projects over the years, and then television and children's TV and that kind of stuff. And then sort of it's mostly been movies over the last few years now.
Awesome. Well, I know our guys here have a lot of questions for you, so I'm gonna put somebody on the spot. How about Peter? I see you've got your BB-8 there in the back, so I know that you're a fan. You've got all the questions.
Yes, actually.
Hit us with something.
The first time I made it's a static BB-8. Funny story though, the first time I had him at a con, Brian, you were a guest at the Edmonton Expo. I think it was 2016.
Oh wow!
And
okay.
I had come back to the booth, and someone had let me know. It's like Brian Herring stopped by and saw your BB-8, and he's like, he wants you to bring him to his booth so he can sign him. So I still have your signature on the back of my BB-8. So
I just write all over anything I see. I just write on it. It's just terrible.
Might as well just make it all yours.
Mine.
So actually, I was just curious. With all the work that you've done, what did you find the most challenging, the most difficult to, whether it was a new technique or a new way of doing something? What do you think was the most that challenged you the most?
Well, we're just in the middle of a job now, which has been very technically interesting and quite difficult, and I can't say anything more than that about the entire thing.
Of course.
BB-8, yeah. I mean, BB-8 was very difficult to do because it had never been done before, and
exactly,
it was a very tricky thing. I mean, once you worked out the methodology of it, and that was worked out with like myself and Josh Lee and Matt Denton. I think Matt's on one point, I think tomorrow. Once we worked out the methodology of it, it then just became a case of getting good at it, with myself and Dave Chapman. And we worked out, we took it away and we worked out what it was good at and what it wasn't so good at. But actually, if I'm really honest about it, the most difficult thing was the pressure. And
I don't doubt that.
And that pressure wasn't applied by anybody externally.
Yeah, it was probably all. Yeah,
because we suddenly, Dave and I, when we got the job, we suddenly realized that BB-8 wasn't just in the movie; he was all in. He was in it all the way through. And if we didn't get it right, we were in a lot of trouble. Because there's been, if you look back, there has been stuff done within Star Wars that people haven't particularly enjoyed, and then those people have had a lot of a lot of stuff thrown at them over the years. Yeah, and because people like to have their say on it, and so I was definitely very, very keen. Dave's very laid back. I'm not. I was very hard on myself about how I wanted that to work, because I definitely wanted to have a character in the Star Wars canon that you could line up next to R2-D2 and Yoda and Chewbacca, and people would go, "Oh yeah, that fits. That is."
Well, yeah. I mean, you guys must have known right from the start that he was going to be that word, iconic. Like, you must have known right from the start that he's. Oh, I remember the first time I saw the trailer. I was actually in the middle of building an R2-D2, and when the trailer came out and BB-8 came on, I was like, "R2, you're dead to me. I want that one."
Well, it's that thing where, I mean, you got to remember, people didn't really know what they were looking at the time. I mean, I said this the other day. There were websites where experts were saying that's CGI, and that's definitely not a real thing. I know special effects, I know practical effects, and that's not real. And we were going, yeah, right, okay, because that was the very first shot of BB-8 in the trailer was me running like stink through the desert. with Dave on the back of the camera car, and then we would just digitally remove. That's not to say it wasn't. There are digital effects on it, but that was a practical droid. I mean, it didn't. You know, the way it worked wasn't necessarily the way you think it would work, but it was there on the day, and it was quite interesting. We didn't know if it was going to be iconic at all. You know, and then did say when the trailer first dropped, people just went, "Oh, this is what is this? That's a soccer ball with half a ball in it. This is awful." And then, luckily, when the film came out, people went, "Oh no, that's quite cute. We like that." So it was.
Oh yeah, people fell in love.
BB-8 was one of the things that got through the entirety of, you know, the sequel trilogy unscathed, because people just liked
very
it.
true.
You know, it's I've had very little sort of internet venom thrown at me over the years. Do excuse me. So the pressure to get it right was very, you know, was
I could imagine. Yes, well,
probably
thank
the
you.
hardest thing. There are little bits and pieces with the sort of performance technique that are difficult, like making him go downstairs and all this. I mean, I've told these stories hundreds of times, but the going down the stairs thing was tricky, because we had to make that up very quickly, because we were told he'd never had to do stairs until the day they said, "Oh, he's got to come down these stairs." So I made a very quick character decision that BB-8's nemesis is stairs.
And it looks like it, the way he looks down at each
that's
step.
it. So he checks the step, makes sure it's okay, and then he kind of bum shuffles like a toddler, and he checks every step. And so that was a very conscious decision to do that.
Okay,
we had to come up with
I got
really
that. I thought that
quickly.
was very cute when he went down the stairs.
Yeah, thank you. But that was the entirety of it. So when we rehearsed, and Dave and I rehearsed, we put cameras, we put a camera on it. We'd see what it looked good doing, and what it didn't look so good doing. And then when we realized what things it didn't look good doing, we didn't do them, if that makes sense. So there are different versions of it, and so you found the best one for whichever task that it had to do. So that was pretty much the way we went at it. And because we knew what it looked like, because we videoed it and watched it back, we knew how to make him look cute, or how to make him look scared, or, you know, angry or whatever. And so that's, once you know that, you get the muscle memory of performing that, and away you go. They're the remote control ones are very different to perform than the hand than the rod puppet, because you can get I think a more kind of a more, not subtle's not the right word, but a more nuanced performance. Because if I shake the rods, I can make the head rattle, so it looks like he's scared, but you can't do that with the animatronics. You have to program all that, and it's, you know, they're a different thing. They have their own set of qualities. So they're all, each one has its own set of qualities and its set of challenges. So
yeah,
but
how many
the hardest thing about
versions
it was the pressure. Sorry,
how many versions of BB-8 were there? You had several different types of
yes,
BB-8 models, right?
Yeah, there were 7 in episode 7. So there was the one with the rods. There's the Wiggler, which is the one on the plate. So that easy to take it off the plate and bolted it to the floor. It didn't go anywhere, but the body would do 359 degrees, and the head would go 359 degrees, and it was a static, so it would rock and roll. And I had the head and the body on that, and David did the lights. And then there were the trike versions, which Matt Denton drove because he was just better at it. So they had an axle in either the left or the right side. So if the axle was in the right side, they would shoot it from the left. So wherever the camera was, we'd use the other one. So Dave would have the head on that. Matt would do the control directions. He would drive it, and then I do lights, and I'd do because I always did the voice on set, and then they would remove that later and put the Skywalker sound stuff would come in, and they would do that. So that's 2 trikes, the rod puppet, the Wiggler. There was the bomb drop, which was the one that would go up and down in the X-wings. So the head would turn on that, and it was basically a shell, but it had a movable head. So that's, I've lost count again. So that's 2 trikes, puppet, Wiggler, bomb drop. The carrying version, which was the one that they load into the service hatch, which is a very lightweight version, and the bowling ball. Now, the bowling ball had a great big weight in the bottom of it, and we used to just kind of throw it around the Millennium Falcon. It would do spinning and various other things. I don't know if that one ever made it into the movie. So there were 7 for the first film, and then while we were making the movie, we would see Josh Lee sitting in the corner scratching his head with his laptop, and what he was doing, because he always felt he had unfinished business, he was working out how to make the one that you saw at Anaheim work. So the one that just rolls around on its own. He and Matt went away and came up with that, and that was built for red carpets, because for some reason they didn't want to see me run up the red carpet in a green suit. I thought that was they weren't having any of it. So then they built that one. So that took it up to 8. And then there was, for The Last Jedi, there was a version, the stunt version was made, which is basically a big rubber version that gets thrown out of the casino in Canto by it. And he bounced. He was you wouldn't want to have him land on your foot, but he bounced around. So that takes you up to 9 versions of it. And then there were versions that were kind of jerry-rigged. I mean, The Last Jedi, when it goes down into the back of the X-Wing and he fixes it, the head goes around the body and comes off the body and hits the panel. That was, I think, one of the Trikes, maybe. I can't remember, but it was parts of different. It may have been the puppet taken to pieces and put together. But that's why we did several different versions of it over the years. But no, I think we got up to about 9 different versions. Matt would be the best person to tell you.
I want to know, what was your favorite scene to film with BB-8? What was the one that you just absolutely loved filming with BB-8?
Well, interestingly, I've just been. If you follow me on X at all, you'll see there's a great account called Star Wars Shot by Shot that is going through all the movies for each individual shot in the film. So he's like, this has got thousands of really nice stills, and he's just got to The Force Awakens, so he's been going through that, and I've been looking at stuff. It's been bringing back all sorts of memories, and the 2 scenes I remember very fondly are the thumbs up scene in the back of the Falcon, which was all done with the puppet, which is really nice. So if you look at that scene, I am 4 feet directly behind BB-8 in every single shot, unless it's from the side, in which case I'm off camera. But I've been removed from that whole thing, and that was just fun to shoot because it was very fast. We had to do lots of stuff. We got it pretty quickly, and the dialogue was very quick. And Dave was having to get the eye lines right, and his BB-8 looking backwards and forwards from the other one to the other, and it was quite precise as well. And then the other scene I really liked is the first scene where Rey finds BB-8 in the desert. And again, we had to shoot that fast because that was shot at what they call magic hour, as the sun is just starting to go down. So the light was beautiful. We shot it over about 4 days, and there was BB-8, and then behind BB-8 was the Lugger Beast, which have got Derek Arnold and Tom Wilton in, and Kieran Shah is riding on the back of it. So there were loads of performers in that scene, and Derek and Tom were removed from the scene completely, as was I. And that was just a fun scene to do because you kind of started to see BB-8's personality come out during that scene, and that's how the relationship with Rey developed. And that was nice to shoot. I've got a lot of fond memories of making that one.
Well, I have to ask, with BB-8's personality, you talked about you're speaking the lines in the movie, and then they remove it for skit style, for the sound later on. Is there a translator app we have where we can have you speaking BB-8's lines transposed in the because I'd love to hear that. It
was never in English. I would beep and boop and just do the stuff, and so it didn't sound like that originally because we didn't know what it sounded like. I had a very when I got this job, I just suddenly found myself in really, really weird places. I wound up sitting in a meeting with Neil Scanlon, Matthew Wood, and Ben Burt. And I remember seeing Ben Burt on the making of The Empire Strikes Back in that footage where he's banging wires, with the thing just to make the laser. I was like, that's Ben Burt. And Ben Burt said to me, "What do you think BB-8 sounds like?" Right. In my head, I'm going, "What are you asking me for? You're the dude. It's like, you tell me what it sounds like. You know what everything sounds like. You made up the sound for the lightsaber." And I sort of said, like it was like R2-D2, but lighter. And they said, "Well, I was then banned from whistling because you're doing all that stuff because it peaks the mics out and it would just mess with sound." So I kind of came up with this thing, which is what I did for most of the first movie. Oh, and then when the film came out, and we all went to see it, and BB-8 spoke for the first time. I'm like, oh, that's what he sounds like now. Okay. And so from everything else, that's what I've done. We did a couple of scenes for Rise of Skywalker where JJ said, I want you to do this in English. And it was right at the very end. And we started doing it in English, and it worked really well. In the same way, you know, you hear Peter Mayhew and those outtakes going, that old man's mad, you know, and it did kind of work. So I don't know if we would ever go back and do it again. If we ever went back to do it again, we may try it that way, or we may not. Who can say? You know, I think, I mean, Anthony Daniels just finds it hysterical to when we were doing The Force Awakens. You just laugh at me as we were doing it, because I'd be beeping away at him. And he just really liked that because he never got any feedback from R2 because, you know, Kenny couldn't see or hear, so he didn't really know what was going on in there half the time. So because I'm outside of it, I can you know, be part of the scene really. So that sort of helps.
Did you ever have fun dialogue between the two of you while you, like, obviously outtakes, but did he ever respond? Did he ever respond to you, or, you know, did you ever have fun banter back and forth, not recording?
What myself and Anthony?
Yeah.
Oh, Anthony. Yeah, I mean, Anthony was constant. I mean, Anthony's a hoot. He's one of the strange and wonderful things that has happened to me off the back of doing these movies is that I am now friends with Anthony Daniels. You know, sometimes he'll call me up, or we'll go out, and, you know, it's like I go to his house, and it's lovely. I think the world of him, and he it's just also very strange that someone that I have had photographs of, albeit in his, you know, golden alter ego, on my wall since I was 7, you know, and now I'm, you know, I just kind of ring him up and go, oh, we're doing this, by the way. And yeah, he's you know, he's really lovely, and yeah, he's been very, very good to me and very kind to me. So that was been did we ever banter really? Not really. I mean, you kind of, what we do is quite technical, especially when Anthony's working, because Anthony has trouble seeing and hearing in that suit. It's because it's a very, very difficult thing to wear. As any of you guys who have been involved in any of the, I mean, if you've worn Stormtrooper lids, you know they're difficult to wear. But once you get involved in, you know, tiny little pinholes with lights right around them, then, you know, that he's often cut off from everybody in there. So people, you know, he's got people in his ear talking to him and stuff. But what we do is generally quite technical. So you just kind of get it shot, because with these things, we didn't really mess about much, to be honest. I think we probably did more we did puppets, and if we were kind of, you do funny, you know, sort of mug to camera with puppets, but it's this, I don't know. No, I don't think we didn't really kind of banter. I mean, he and I do, but we're not really within the context of the films.
Yeah.
So that's not a very good answer, is it? But that's true.
No, it's a good answer.
I was wondering if you could tell us about your experience with how your experience working with BB-8 has affected your performances with more natural puppets, say, like.
I think you take everything individually as it comes. It's you just, sometimes you just know what works and what doesn't, and it's I think if BB-8 has taught me anything, I'm unafraid is the wrong word, but now once you've stood next to Harrison Ford on the Millennium Falcon and played a scene, there's not much that really phases you. So you now approach stuff with, how can we make this look good? What does it look good doing? What doesn't it look good doing? And not being afraid to say, I think we need to try this, or this isn't working. So if you as I've kind of done more work over the years, as I've been actually done 30 odd years, you just get older as a person, you get hopefully a little bit wiser. But you just, when something isn't as good as you want it to be, you go, why isn't this working? And you hopefully are then analytical enough to go, this doesn't work because of this. And I think with BB-8, what that did teach me was, when you're doing something on that scale where everybody's going to look at it, you've got to make sure that you're happy with what you've got and not being afraid to ask. So if anything, I don't think it's affected the performance of anything, but I think the attitude with which you approach something, you go, okay, we're going to make, whether it is a tiny children's television program or a massive multi-million-dollar blockbuster, you're just trying to apply the same principle to everything and make it as good as you can. And so I think what the Star Wars experience did teach me is that I was trusted with something very, very big that has become very, close to a lot of people's hearts. And so you just go, okay, I now have the confidence to take that forward and make it work. And I think that's probably what has affected everything else. That makes sense. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense, yeah. A little while ago, sorry, you were talking about the thumbs up feature on BB-8, and that's actually been a struggle of the Builders Club, just trying to figure out a way to work that into our mechanisms. So,
well, good luck.
And to hear there was actually a Puppeteer, it was, oh my.
No. That's digital.
Oh,
that panel was replaced. The technically difficult part of that for me was to make sure that that panel was in the right place towards the camera in the right angle so that ILM could come in, and they just covered that panel up and added it. So that's digital.
Right.
And if anybody can put a live flame into a
working on it.
Good luck with that. Yeah, I'm sure someone will do it. I mean, people were coming up with ways to do that pretty quick. BB-8 generally, those things were coming out from the builders clubs really fast. So,
really fast.
Yeah, I mean, there was I think, when did we see the first Dio? There was someone had leaked a picture of Dio somewhere along the line at Celebration. I want to say Chicago.
Yeah, it was Chicago. Remember, the next day there was little Dio right when he came into the droid room.
Yeah, it was the wrong shape. It was flat, wasn't it? It was the wrong proportions. It was too thin.
And I was like, wow, someone stayed up all night after the trailer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's I think there was a picture. These things invariably come from toy companies because their products has got such a long lead time that they kind of sometimes they get leaked. But there was a Dio thing floating around on the internet, I think, very early doors, and then the trailer came out, and then I think they rolled out the little remote control Dio as well. Was that at Chicago? I think it was.
Yeah, it would ever around Chicago.
Yeah. Who's got one? Oh, hello.
Well, this is fascinating. I'm loving talking about BB-8, but I am a big fan of, and I've been wanting to, let everybody ask their questions, but I want to know about the Porgs. Tell us about the Porgs.
Well, the Porgs were originally developed, and I'm sure a lot of you know this anyway, when they went to Skellig Michael, there's the colony of puffins that live on the island, and they are protected, obviously, and it's an area of great natural beauty, so that's also protected. And so they couldn't just go and take all the puffins off of the island. So I think Ryan came up with the idea of putting some kind of indigenous bird there that they could just put in and cover the real birds up. So Jake Lunt Davis designed the Porgs through various stages. I think you've got Jake this weekend. He'll tell you all about that. And then we were tasked with, they had some animatronic ones, and then we were tasked with having little rod puppet versions. There's two of us. It was, again, myself and Dave, and there were another team, which were Damien Farrell and Colin Purvis. And so one of us was on the head and the body, and the feet were sprung loaded, so they could kind of hop around, and the feet would the legs would disappear into the body, so you could hop them, and they would look like and their feet would flop down as well. And then Dave was on the wings, so they were back breaking as well, because you were kind of bent over, because they're only about this big, and so you were running about in green suits. And the shot where one's stamping on the lightsaber and the other one's looking down the end, we rehearsed that, and we were directly behind the puppets, and it's quite easy because you just look straight down the puppet to what you were looking at. And then about 2 weeks before we went out to Ireland to film it, Neil Scanlon came to us and said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to be on a cliff, so you can't be behind them because you'll be in the sea. So you're going to have to go off to the left and the right." So everything then had a bend in it, so we had to be out of frame, working across, and it was much more difficult, especially for Dave on the wings, because the rods were different lengths then. So one was shorter for the left wing and the other one was longer for the right. And so that was, they were tricky, but they were fun to do. And the sad Porg, when Chewbacca's eating his mum, there were 5 of us, I think, controlling that, because the bottom lip would move and the eyes would go, and there were, again, someone on the body, and it was, there were little mechanisms for all kinds of things. So there were 5 puppeteers on that. So that was
Wow.
a fun one. But they were a fun thing to do.
Cool.
I liked it. Yeah, they were good.
Now we got to ask the Chewbacca question, right? Are porgs friends or food type of idea, right?
Well, it depends who you speak to, really. I mean, you never actually saw him eat that. I think that
I don't know. I don't know if you can see my coin, but it says
Very
porgs are
nice.
friends, not food.
Yeah, very good.
This stays with me. Just a
I have
little
a porg
reminder.
lawn gnome out in the backyard right now.
What I do need to say about those porgs is they weren't exclusively puppets. There's a lot of digital work being done there by ILM, and sometimes they're a hybrid of the two. Or they'd be like, they'd use the puppet for reference and then replace it completely. Or like when they take off, digital. You know, you can only do that. We'd start the move and then they would be taken over digitally. So they weren't, don't come away from this thinking they were done entirely with puppetry, because they weren't.
That's very cool. So you did a lot of stuff that were practical effects, and then what was it like merging some of those practical effects with those digital effects? Was that like a really difficult thing to do, or was it just kind of, natural? You did what you did, and then they came in behind you.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there were times where either Roger Glaire, and I can't remember who I did. I think Ben Morris was the VFX producer for the second one. They would say, okay, we can get you this far. So Neil has a really good relationship, Neil Scanlon, with the visual effects department, because it's like, he'll go, right, we've got this puppet, but there's an idiot in a green suit standing right behind it, so we've got to get rid of him. And then don't worry, we'll get rid of it. And then you kind of work with them to work out what the least amount of removal would be. I mean, sometimes I would have to keep out of 3 different camera shots, and you can only do it up to a point. If you've got to play, performance first, and then they fix it later. So you would go, right, I can be under this table for this, but you'd have to take the rod out. And then there'd be other stuff, like Rio, for instance, from Solo, was it started off as a puppet and Katie in a suit, and then it went almost entirely digital. She was there for all the reference stuff, and then they would just that performance is almost entirely digital now. But they would have Katie there as a reference, so they could see the fur and the leather and the costume and which way it would move. And then they'd shoot plates and then just replace it all. And they did that. They do that sort of thing quite a bit, but there's a lot of sort of input gone in from the practical effects end, the practical creature effects end first, which really helps them with lighting and textures and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of a nice marriage now. And there's there's everybody, not everybody. There are people that just go, practical effects are better, but actually, so many practical effects you see have got digital augmentation that you don't spot. But because the practical has grounded it in reality, you just assume it all is, and that's great because it's all part of the magic. I see people, kind of on the internet get kind of upset when they suddenly realize there's a man behind BB-8, and you go, well, I think there was a real robot, did you? It's not. That's
not actually another planet that was shot on Earth.
Well, yeah, it's that thing. It's not like people are smart. But they go, oh, they've ruined that for me. Well, they didn't really ruin it for you. You just seen something you didn't know. If you felt you liked it when you saw it, then it worked, right?
Absolutely.
And they didn't shoot the scenes in Abu Dhabi. In the sand.
Yeah, no, we went to Jakku. And we're going to go back there because everyone wants to go back to Jakku, don't they? That's just
So, Brian, you mentioned Little Shop of Horrors, as in like Audrey 2?
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah,
I've done that show quite a bit. I can see behind me. I've done that quite often, and that's a good time. I really enjoy that show, and I think it's a great musical, and it's not very long, which is also useful. So you can have a nice evening afterwards. It's about an hour and a half door to door, so it means you're in the pub by 9:45.
So. What did you puppeteer on Muppet Treasure Island? I realize we're whipping off franchise here, but it's one of my favorite movies. I love
it.
With Muppets Treasure, when the Muppets come to town, what tends to happen is they employ the World and his brother from England, and then you get the guys. There's the Muppet performers come over, and they do all the Muppets, and you do all the frogs and pigs and chickens and whatnots in the background. So I did frogs and pigs and chickens and whatnots in the background on Treasure Island. I was on the boat I was in the treasure when they find the treasure trove and they're throwing the coins around and that kind of stuff. I left that film in the middle and went to do a TV show. And then I came back like 15 weeks later and they were still making it. You know, it's just the film went on forever. So yeah, various, nothing to write home about, you know, just like fifth frog from the back on Treasure Island. It was nothing, but it was a nice experience and beautiful sets. And I remember being on the Hispaniola, which was on a great big gimbal. So it was constantly rocking and there were people feeling a bit seasick. That was always funny.
And Brian, you may say that it's not that big of a deal, but I do have to ask the question because my wife is a huge Muppets Treasure Island fan, as well as my daughter. Were you puppeteering one of the pigs that was Miss Piggy's entourage? Because if I can say to my wife that I have met somebody who did that, then you know I will never get divorced in my life. Is what will happen at that point.
But I would have known someone who did that.
All right, I'm good. I'm
there
good.
You go. You can say that. I can't remember.
That's good for another 20 years, Stephen. Another 20 years, you're golden.
I'm good. I got 20 years in the bank. Yeah. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. I honestly don't remember. It's terrible, isn't it? I should have taken more notice.
You should remember every single detail over your
every
entire
job you
career,
ever did.
every single thing.
I do wish I'd kept a diary for certain things, but it's quite interesting going back and either watching the movie or seeing these shot breakdowns and going, oh yeah, I remember that day. Yeah, it's I think Lee Towers, he kept a diary, I think, for his time when he first joined The Force Awakens when he came on to build R2-D2. So I imagine that's quite an interesting read.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So the art of puppeteering. Let's say no one has an idea about it and they're just chiming into our panel. How would you describe the art of what it is that you do? What's involved in it? And what you love most about it?
Right. Okay.
Right. Moving on.
Wow.
I was gonna say, Teresa, did you see his face as you asked that question?
I'm not really a puppeteer's puppeteer because I blundered into it. You know,
yeah, you mentioned that earlier. I was curious about that. Like when I was a kid and people would ask, like, what do you want to be? Like, puppeteering never came to mind. You know, everybody, the doctor, the teacher, you know, all the things. So like I'm curious about that part of it too. Like you kind of, like you said, you blundered into it, but then like you've made this insane career out of it. So
I lied at an audition. That's honestly, I lied at an audition, and 6 weeks later I was on television. I was an actor, so I was jogging around. I was doing stand up. I was working as a stage manager. I was working the flies in the theater, that kind of stuff. And then I got this gig, and I just kept. I went, oh, okay, this allows me to use a lot of my acting and performing muscles, but I don't have to look like Brad Pitt. You know, so you can play anything. If you do the voice, you can play anything. That's changed a bit now. But it's so you know you had you got to use all of your kind of your performance muscles, but from the elbow upwards. So that was quite interesting. I mean, I suppose if you're going to say, Jim Henson would say about, you know, you bring things you I don't know how would you say this? It's you bring things that aren't alive. You know, you give life to the inanimate object. And whether you do that with just your hand in a sock, or there's 5 of you working in extremely intricate animatronic, it's about putting life into the lifeless. I mean, I'm sure there are other people who would give you a far more eloquent explanation of this, but because it was, I always kind of just sort of, I mess about with bits of felt. And that's kind of, and it's done me all right so far. So I'm wrecking a real dog's dinner of this answer. I do apologize, but there are people that wanted to be puppeteers from like day one. I mean, there's a guy we work with called Neil Sterenberg, who, for my money, is one of the best puppeteers in the country, and he was fascinated with puppets from when he was very, very small. Colin Purvis, who we work with a lot. Colin's family were puppeteers. They have a puppet theatre in Scotland, and you know, Colin's been a puppeteer since he was about 7, you know, professionally. Wow. So he's just been at it for that long. I, on the other hand, I'm a bit of a blagger, really. I always feel like a massive fraud because you know, they didn't want Brian Herring, they wanted Brian Henson. Oh, sorry, I'll go. You know, it's so I'm probably, I say I'm not the best person to answer that, but it is about, I suppose it's about giving life to the lifeless, but then that's also the plot of Frankenstein, so that's probably not a good idea either. But
so
yeah, I'm sorry, I've got nothing. Sorry.
So I was going to ask you about how you work about building these personalities for these puppets that you puppeteer.
Okay, well, that's what you do with that. I mean, first of all, with BB-8, we sat down and read the script, and a lot of it was in there. He was feisty, you know, he was tenacious, he was loyal, all of that stuff. The personality started to come out as we shot it, really. And again, I've said this before, but I based it. There's the point where Daisy, when Ray is straightening the aerial, and if you watch, we did a couple of takes with it, and then I lowered his head, and she takes the thing out, and he looks back at her, and she goes to put it back, and he puts his head down again. And I based that very much on my dog was hit by a car years and years ago, and he had a plate in his leg. And when you went up to him, you'd say, "Where's your bad leg, Max?" And he would lean against you and offer you his back leg, and you give it a stroke. So when BB-8 and Ray see each other again in the movie, and we did it twice in The Force Awakens, both of which were cut, but there are stills around on the internet of this moment. Every time he would go up to her, he'd put his head down and she'd check his aerial. And then in The Last Jedi, when they're reunited at the end, you just see her tweaking his aerial, and she says, "Oh, it looks great." And then when she gets out of the X-Wing at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, he goes up to her, and the first thing she does, he puts his head down and she checks the aerial. And so that was basically, so he was very much, he's Poe Dameron's dog.
No,
because Poe needs to get, he puts the you know, he gives him the plans, away you go, and the dog runs away. Then the dog gets caught in a net, and then Ray finds a stray dog. The stray dog follows her home, and they take the dog back to the master. And so that's very much the BB-8 is their dog, and he's loyal to all of them, and he goes with whoever. Come on, we're going for a walk. You know, whether it's, you know, Finn and Rose, we'll take the dog with us. And that's really what BB-8 is in my head. He's like a Jack Russell. So that was that. What a lot of the time you get I did a TV show for Henson's called Mop a Top Shop years ago, and we would get given all they all came out of the Muppet store. So I was picking up puppets that were used on the Muppet Show in the 70s, like the Frackles and all, you know, the kind of the creaturey ones, the green Frackle and the purple Frackle, and we would have to put voices into them because this thing was a shop, and so there were constantly customers coming in for different things, and there would be these old Muppets, and so you'd have to come up with a voice that worked with the look of the puppet and also work with the script. So you'd just sit there with a mirror and just play around with it for a bit, and you'd have to make decisions very, very quickly, and then if they were the wrong ones, you'd have to live with it. But it's they were only ever in for one episode each, so you just kind of look at stuff. I mean, Mel Blanc was very much who said that he would do that when he was voicing the Looney Tunes. He would look at pictures of them and just say, well, you know, how do you speak? And then the voices would come. So you do that kind of thing, and you put little physical ticks into things as well, whether they're constantly looking around, or, you know, if they you know, the voice also affects. I think sometimes the voice influences the movement, or vice versa. If you've got a very slow character, you can't have him speaking very quickly, you know, because it's counterintuitive, and it doesn't necessarily work. So you kind of put all those things together, and hopefully a character will come out at the end.
Thank you. Beetlejuice, you were saying.
Yes.
Let's talk some Beetlejuice, please.
Well, let's not say it too often, or it'll go.
Yeah, one more time.
Well, Neil Scanlon was the creature supervisor for Beetlejuice, and that was fun. We a lot of the usual suspects were on that. Myself and Dave and Derek Arnold, and a whole bunch of the guys came in for that. With animatronics, we were doing the heads on the shrinkers, the shrunken head guys that were Beetlejuice's guys in the call center. Neil Sterenberg was the head performer for Bob on that, who I mentioned earlier, and that was Nick Kellington was inside that. Nick Kellington was inside. He performed is it Bestine, the space monkey in Rogue One. He's been in lots of stuff in Star Wars, and Nick is he's an amazing suit performer. So that was Neil and Nick performing Bob. And then myself and Colin Purvis, who I mentioned earlier, and Neil Scanlon. And I think Dave did some on it as well. He was part of the animatronics and team. We did the baby, the crazy nightmare baby that appears in the
very crazy
act and then comes back at the end. Spoilers, sorry. But that was fun. That was a little rod puppet, and so there were three of us there doing the sort of the body of it. And I think Lynn Robertson Bruce was involved in that as well, who did Dio. But then we were removed later. So when you see that baby, there's at least three people around that baby as it's working. There's one shot where it comes around the corner of the sofa, and they put the sofa in later because there wasn't enough room for the people. So they just moved the sofa. We followed the track of where the baby needed to go. And then they shot a plate of where the sofa was, and they just put it back together in. So they CG'd the sofa in. They comped it. So again, it's CGI everywhere. But what you have there is a practical puppet terrorizing Winona Ryder, and that was crazy. We did Beetlejuice's exploding guts as well. That was all practical. That was a rig with a great big kind of air plunger. And there were wires and stuff like that. And I think it was a 2-hour reload for that. We did it a couple of times. It was kind of just goo and nasty. And they just come in with the mops and get all that up, and it went everywhere. It was hilarious. But that was a fun show because it was silly.
Yeah,
it was really silly. And Tim Burton had that kind of, I just want to have fun with this. And it was there's a slightly shonky sort of aesthetic with Beetlejuice, and that was nice to play with as well, because because these things don't look real. And then there's loads of people from the Scandal Workshop in that movie that have got their heads cut off, or they're in various disguises. Ivan Manzella, one of the Star Wars concept artists, is in the exploding spaceman who's standing behind in the queue. This has got big bulgy eyes. I'm doing his arm. I'm doing the remote control of his eyes, but that's Ivan inside the suit. And so there's loads of people we knew in that show. So that was a lot of fun. And again, you're like, oh, there's Danny DeVito there. We like Danny DeVito. It's really odd to be going, oh look, this Winona Ryder and Jenna Ortega, and everyone was lovely. We had a really, really nice time. We shot it really, really quickly too. So it was great when it came out and did so well as well, because it was an hour and 45 minutes door to door. It wasn't a particular chore to watch. It was great fun, and it was just silly. And it's nice that something like that can come out and do well. That's just a bit of fun.
Awesome, thank you. So, anybody else? Because I got more.
I want to go back to Star Wars, because you were talking about how you grew up in the 70s, and Star Wars was part of your childhood growing up, and now you walk onto The Force Awakens and all these other shows, and you are seeing the actors. I mean, did that affect you at all on your performance, or was it that moment in time of like, oh my gosh, I'm here type of idea?
Did you cry a little?
Yeah. There's again, this is sorry, I didn't. What did you say? Sorry.
I said, did you cry a little?
Well, the Millennium Falcon will make grown men cry. It's
yes, agreed.
if you've been to Galaxy's Edge, a bit of Wee comes out.
Oh yeah.
It's like when you get to the actual one, you're like, we used to take people up there. I mean, Kevin Smith. I was there when Kevin Smith went on, and just it was hilarious. But I'll make this. This is the short version of the long version. But I started in the July, I think, of 2013, and we didn't start shooting until the following March or April. And so I was seeing designs that coming through of new stormtroopers and costumes and spaceships and stuff, and it was all like Star Wars, but it wasn't quite like Star Wars. And then we met Daisy and John, and they got the new characters, and they were like Star Wars but not quite Star Wars, and all these new creatures were being designed that were very, very Star Wars but still not quite Star Wars. All the new stormtroopers looked like stormtroopers but not quite like stormtroopers. We went off to Abu Dhabi. There's Vaporators, there's speeders. You know, it's very much like Star Wars. Still not quite Star Wars. We then go back. We start working in a big black room full of stormtroopers, mouse droids, doing all that. Like Star Wars, not quite Star Wars. Then we went to M Stage, and we had 2 weeks, I think, with Daisy and John and BB-8 on the Falcon. And that was really like Star Wars, but still not quite like Star Wars. And then Harrison Ford came to work. And he came up the ramp with his big hairy friend in all the gear, and I was standing in the cockpit in the cockpit corridor, holding BB-8 up, and in my resplendent in my green onesie, and Indiana Jones looked me up and down and just went, "Who picked that look?" and walked away. And, and then we got into the scene where BB-8 brings the map and all this sort of stuff, and JJ's like, okay, yeah, Harrison's going to do this, and then BB-8 does that. And about halfway through the first take, I suddenly went, oh, I'm in Star Wars. And that's when I panicked. Not there and then. I don't know, oh, God, I'm in Star Wars. But that was the point. You suddenly went, oh, this is huge. And I'm an idiot from Essex. And this is how this happened. I don't quite get this. But you just have to do it like eating an elephant, you know, if you do it one bite at a time. And also you're there to do a job, so you can't freak out. But it's like, Harrison Ford, you know, so and he's very cool. So that's nice, you know, but everybody's you're just trying to do your best work whilst you're standing next to one of the biggest film stars in history. So yeah, there is a certain amount of, you try not to freak out, but yeah, there were people in tears. It did get to people, especially people of a certain age, because you grew up on it. And I think that's one of the reasons that people get so passionate about Star Wars generally, because it has been such a part of our childhood across the board. So people have opinions, and they are very protective of that. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes not so much.
No, thank you. I just, like I said, that's I can only imagine, you know, saying as a fan going into that environment, you know, and with you saying Harrison Ford, you know, who picked that color, I imagine that night probably that resonated a little bit more that night when you got like, he said something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, and you know, but I was very lucky because I got to work with Carrie, and I got to, you know, meet Mark and chat with him and Anthony, and you know, it was wonderful to meet them, and they were and have them be everything you wanted them to be. You know, because it would have been awful if you got them to be terrible people, which they just were. You know, they were lovely. Everybody was really happy to be there, and it was a good time. It was a really good
childhood dreams shattered.
Yeah, oh yeah, totally. You know, they say never meet your heroes. I've been really, really lucky so far. You know, I've been very fortunate in that respect to work with directors that I've really admired, and then they've been great, and then work with stars that you just think, oh, I hope they're not awful, and they're not. They're really nice.
Brian, thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sharing this hour. It's a joy to spend any time with you. And
thank you very much for putting up with it.
No, it's wonderful. We are so
great
to have you. Thank you for coming on and supporting Starlight with us. Everything that we do, all the panels over these next 20 some hours that we're going to do. Hopefully anybody that's out there watching finds content that they love. You know, maybe you have it in you to donate. If you do, it's starlight.org at Holiday of Hope, not at Holiday, sorry, starlight.org/Holiday of Hope. Thank you so much, everybody. For my Legion brothers, thank you very much for joining our panel.
Thank you very much, and I'll see you, in a couple of hours for, what are we doing? We're doing quiz, we're doing trivia, aren't we?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Jeopardy style game show.
It's
going to be good.
Absolutely mauled.
Yeah.
Cannot wait to watch that. That'll be awesome.
No, it's all about the speed of the buzzer. Don't be scared.
Yes.
It's going to be good.
Thanks so very much for having me, guys.
Okay.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
It's great to see the kids, and it brings like a light to their day. And I mean, I know the term is used a lot, but it's really great to bring smiles to them. And it just is a really great way to give back for all of us.
There are studies that show that play, while amazing for childhood development, also positively improves outcomes, health outcomes for kids. And so that's where Starlight's programs of delivering happiness, like our Starlight gowns, like this one here today, one of our newest Star Wars gowns, plus the toys and the games that we're able to deliver, really are helping to improve health outcomes for the kids that we serve.
There's so many benefits for our patients and families coming to events like Star Wars Day. It's all about quality of life for our patients as a pediatric palliative care center. So coming to events like this where the patients, their siblings, their parents can all participate in activities together in a medically friendly environment where children with diseases, injuries, and illnesses can meet other kids like them, and siblings can meet other siblings like them and just have fun is such a value for families to feel less alone.
Coming here and seeing like this community of people that are volunteering or work here, and the Starlight Foundation and how they put this on is just really reassuring, and seeing the big smile on his face is just giving me a little bit of solace knowing that he's in good hands.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Teresa.
Hi.
So we've kicked it off, and we are starting to obviously see donations come in. We both wanted to remind you that the links are QR coded below, and we want to give Starlight an incredible showing this year through donations with the 501st. But we also have this amazing Star Wars community, and at the end of the day, we all have one goal, and that is to raise money, individually for other charities or for charities. And it doesn't matter if it's the 501st or if it's the Rebel Legion or Dark Empire or Droid Builders or Mando Mercs or any other clubs out there. There's this incredible Star Wars community, and they're all mobilized towards this whole goal of acknowledging charities. And remember, none of the money goes to us; it goes straight to the charities. This year, there are a couple of other initiatives that are happening. And alongside of what we're doing. At the end of the day, we would love to have you donate on our behalf, but at the end of the day, if you also want to donate on someone else's behalf, you can do that as well. Again, the winner at the end of the day is Starlight. But one of the amazing projects that's happening on the sidelines here is a project called the Ornament Project. And that was founded by one of our Legion members, who you'll hear some more from at the end as the day goes on with some other videos. But we wanted to just tell you that there is a whole bunch of other fun sideline stuff in the Star Wars community that will be also focused on raising money for Starlight. And then another initiative that we'll talk about probably tomorrow because it's forthcoming. But isn't that exciting, Teresa?
Yep.
You having
It
fun
is
so
exciting.
far?
Yes, actually, I'm sleepy, but
talk about some fun stuff. But in the meantime, let's keep going. We have a wonderful panel coming up right now. The Leias that lunch, and I mean, how often do you get all these Leia voices in one place and princess voices in the Star Wars universe? So without further ado, here are the Leias that lunch.
Hello there, and everybody, welcome back. We are here with the ladies who play Leia for the Holiday of Hope Telethon, supporting Starlight Children's Foundation. Joining us today, we do have some amazing women. They've really helped shape the animated and the gaming worlds within Star Wars and other franchises. We have Anna Graves, Catherine Tabor, Julie Dolan, Misty Lee as well. Ladies, tell us a little bit about your background within Star Wars, voice acting, and really just everything that you've kind of worked for and worked within this huge, crazy franchise.
My almost my whole career has been Star Wars. And I've talked about it a lot, but it's really true. The first thing I did was Mission Veo for a game called Knights of the Old Republic. It was my second audition for voiceover ever. And I got that. And then ever since then, I've been blessed to show up in the Star Wars franchise. Every time I think it's done, something else comes back up, and I'm so excited about it. But although I have played Leia in a couple of video games and a live stage show as well, I'm mostly known for Padme in the Clone Wars and other projects. And yeah, I was a Star Wars fan, so it's been a blessing. And one of the best parts is getting to meet and work with wonderful people like these ladies here.
Well, we love you. Anna, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Because I met Kat on my first Star Wars project. I guess it wasn't technically my first Star Wars project. I had done a random audition to do. No, actually, it was. That was my first one. The Clone Wars. I auditioned through my agent. I got the job. I got a call back, and I thought, well, I'm never going to get this, but that was a really lovely experience getting called back for Star Wars. And then I got cast as the Duchess Satine of Mandalore. And it was just magical. It was magical getting to work on that show and getting to play the Duchess Satine. And then I did get an audition. My first Leia audition was for a pinball app. So it was something that they were working on up at Lucas, and got it. So I played Leia in that. And then I did Leia in the Battle Pod, Star Wars Battle Pod. And because I had done those, they asked me to do Leia in Disney Infinity 3.0, which I don't know if anyone can even still play that game. I think you can play it, but not online. So, but yeah, but that was my experience getting to be Leia. And then I got to meet all these beautiful, wonderful ladies. And I've been in the business for 20 years. And when you can make friendships that feel as close like this, like we're like cousins, it doesn't matter how many months go when we don't get to all talk or have lunch. It's just it's like picking up the next day when we get to talk to each other. And I just love you all.
It really is.
We love you.
Julie, you want to take it?
Sure. Well, get a cup of coffee. Voice acting was not in the stars for me. I mean, I'd never thought about being a voice actor. I started when I was a kid, acting on camera and TV and film and commercials, and a dancer. And eventually we started working in theme parks in Universal Studios, and started doing kid shows, which led to live animated shows for Universal and videos for them. And while I was doing that, I'm in costume, live action costume character dancing. Somebody else was doing the voice, but I didn't even put that together that, oh, that's a voice actor, because I was always an on-camera actor. And then they asked me to do, hey, can you do this little flower voice? Can you do this little voice? yeah, sure. And my sister said to me, you know, you keep booking all of these voice acting jobs. You should maybe take a class or focus on that. And I went, no, 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 that's a whole other career. I am focused on my dance career and my acting, my on camera. And finally, I said, okay, I'll take a voice class, which is basically an acting class. And I got a demo, got an agent like that. And I thought, okay, I should have done this a long time ago. And I started booking commercials and things like that. Years later, my agent called and said, hey, can you sound like Princess Leia from A New Hope? And now I got to be honest, I've seen Star Wars. I back in '77, but I was more into musicals and the old MGM musicals and horror films. I wasn't into sci-fi, so I never got into the whole thing of being a Star Wars fan. But I did see the movies, the first three. So when she asked me if I could sound like her, they gave me, I didn't know what this was for, and they never tell you anything. They gave me the Obi-Wan Kenobi speech. And so I did my thing and I, you know, matched the voice as best I could, sent it in, didn't hear anything. And then a few weeks later, I got a call back and I said, what is this for? We still didn't know. When I finally booked it, it turned out it was for Star Tours ride at all the Disney parks. And so I went in and I did sort of an Obi-Wan Kenobi speech, but it was geared for the people in the ride. And that was 2010, I believe. And the ride came out, and I don't know, maybe 5 years, 6 years later, I guess Dave Filoni saw that and said, who is that actress? And they called me in for Star Wars Rebels, which of course I didn't know what it was for. But I did some kind of in-house Star Wars thing where I did like a motion or a performance capture. They had dots all over my face and a helmet on, and Dave directed me, and I didn't know it. I think it was an audition, to be honest with you. I don't know. I never saw what it was for. I never got a copy of it. And that's the day he said, okay, so when you come back for Rebels, and I thought, oh, did I just book something? I had never seen Rebels. So boy, when I got these jobs, I did my homework. I watched all the movies. There were 6 of them at the time. I watched all 6 over and over and over because I wanted to see who she was. And I read Wikipedia and Wikipedia, everything I could read on Princess Leia. Because as an actor, you want to kind of dive into your character and find out who their parents are and what their goals were and what they wanted. And then I started booking the video games and other animated series. And then when I did my first convention, before I did that, somebody recommended I call Kat Tabor, who could guide me. And I didn't know her. And I'm calling this voice actress. And I thought, she's going to think I'm an idiot. I said, I've never done a convention. She said, oh, well, you will now. And so I did one of my first, I think it was my first convention with her. So she kind of showed me the ropes. I didn't even know what cosplay was. I was like, why are all those people dressed up? Is it Halloween? It's May. She said, no, that's cosplay. They dress as their face. So I was a newbie, but over the years, doing more and more conventions and you know, different little jobs here and there, it changed my world. And meeting these girls, we're lifelong friends. So, and meeting all the fans across the universe, across the globe, is mind blowing because it's a huge family that I was immediately accepted in. And it, you know, of course, doing my research helped because when the fans come up and they want to talk about all the different characters and all the different movies, at least I knew a little bit of what they were talking about. But yeah, it was an eye opener. Okay, you can put your coffee down now. Sorry.
Well, I think I'm the last one then. Yeah, I guess I'm the last one. So my name is Misty Lee, and I played Princess Leia in Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2. And in number 2, I got to play her in motion capture, being able to do things and run around a stage and have Carrie Fisher run around on the screen and have her do the Macarena and do all kinds of stuff that Carrie Fisher probably never would have done. I also play the ninth sister in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, that franchise, and I play security droids, and I've done all kinds of stuff in the universe. But I will say that the Star Wars fandom is unlike anything else that I've ever experienced. And it brings together the idea of sci-fi and the light and the dark forces, brings together and unifies people in a way unlike any other fandom does. Y'all are awesome. And you're all here for a wonderful reason today. And I'm really delighted to be a very small part of it and very, very happy to be here.
We are so excited to have you all. When I was told that I would be hosting this panel, I had immediately called my mom, who also does Princess Leia, and I was like, "You're never gonna believe it. You're gonna be jealous." I was like, I get to talk to like the Princess Leias that like I grew up with. So like Clone Wars, Rebels, Battlefront 1 and 2. I played those with my dad. I mean, I grew up with all of you voicing Leia, and it's a huge honor. So when it comes to fans like me, kids like me who grew up with you guys, or just fans who, they heard you as Leia and they're like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. What's a moment that meeting those fans has really just touched you and made you feel like, this is it. I'm the princess. I am the Leia.
I don't think I've ever felt that way, honestly. I mean, it is a dream come true, but it feels like a dream that you have your finger on the pulse of for a moment, because so many fans of Leia are Leia. I don't think that and I don't know how the other girls feel about it, but I feel like it was just a really cool thing I got to do. And I was scared to death of it when I was booked, because mine was a voice match too. And they sent me like 45 lines. And I think all of us girls in town probably read on it. And I did half of them. And I was like, they're going to be able to hear from this. And my agent, that whether or not I can do it, my agent called back and said, finish this audition. And I was like, it's so much. And one of her boss lines was in there. And it was like, what's this even in here for? That carbonite line, like, what? I can't, what's this? It was so weird. But anyway, Nick Lanza was my agent at the time. And he called back and he goes, finish this. You're very close to her. And I finished it and sent it back in, and he called me a couple weeks later and he was like, I told you, girl, I told you, you just booked it. And you don't believe it, when you book it. And so when I went in to do the video game, it didn't hit me until halfway through what I was being allowed to do. Does that make sense, Mackenzie? I was just like, oh, it's just another job. And you go in to do the job. And then they put up artwork halfway through the session. We'd probably recorded 100 lines, 150 lines at the time. And the directors were in the cans or your headphones at the time. And I was like, oh, and we're getting it done. And it's just a job. And then all of a sudden they put up artwork of her in Hoth gear. And I went, ugh. Because 3-year-old me who loves her and has loved her since I was little went, oh my God. And I just panicked and I shut down. And I was being directed by a guy named Dara, who all these girls know, and he's amazing. He's lovely. And he was in my ears, and I just started having like a panic attack. And I really freaked out, like as a fangirl. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I just couldn't get control of myself. And I didn't want them to know that, of course. So I just said, hey guys, I'm going to need a minute. And Dara popped on and unmuted his microphone. And I heard one of his kids go, Dad! And he said, I also am going to need a minute. And it felt in that moment like Carrie was like, it's all good, kid. You got this, And I just hearing that Dara's daughter needed to do that in the middle of this like job that felt like such a big deal just brought me right back down to earth. And so going back to your original question, touching base with anyone who has ever been touched by this, but also more getting in touch with who the character is just a privilege for a fleeting moment, because I don't think anybody's ever going to be Carrie. Carrie's it. She put her